There's a strange feeling that settles over certain days. Not fear exactly, not excitement either. Something in between. A pressure in the room, a charge in the air. The quiet sense that life is standing just outside the door, holding its breath, waiting for the right moment to knock. Maybe you felt this too. You woke up and nothing obvious has changed. The same ceiling, the same phone, the same obligations waiting for you, the same body carrying the same unfinished thoughts from the day before. But something feels different. It's not dramatic enough to explain to anyone. You can't say, like, I think something's coming, without sounding a little strange. So you just move through the day with that private weather inside you. You answer messages, you drink coffee, you open the same apps. You stand in the kitchen for a second longer than necessary, listening to the refrigerator hum. Some part of you is waiting for a sign that never quite arrives. Maybe that's why you clicked. Maybe the words touch something in you that you haven't been able to say. Maybe you've been carrying the feeling that something's approaching. But you don't know whether it's good or bad or beautiful or dangerous. I don't know where you're listening from tonight. Maybe you're in bed with the room dark. Maybe you're driving under streetlights that make the road look like a film from somebody else's life. Maybe you're sitting in a kitchen after everyone else has gone to bed, just needing another voice in the room. But if you're still here, there's probably a reason. In a world full of noise, trust the signal. If you're hearing this, you've already found it. This is Dove and Serpent Radio. And there's a particular kind of waiting that nobody really talks about. Not like we're waiting for a package or a phone call or something, right? But a deeper kind, where their whole life feels like it's entered a hallway. You're not going to be where you used to be. But you're not where you're going either, right? Everything's kind of suspended. The old identity doesn't fit. The new one hasn't fully arrived. The old rhythm is broken, but the new rhythm hasn't found you yet. And in that in-between place, ordinary life starts to feel symbolic. A crow on the fence feels like an omen. Yeah, a stranger's sentence lands too close. The clock shows repeating numbers, and maybe you don't believe in that kind of thing, not exactly, but you notice, right? Because something in you is alert. As if the animal part of your soul has lifted its head. You can hear footsteps, right, long before the door opens. And, modern life makes it worse. We're always being told that something's coming. A new crisis, an update, a new opportunity, or a collapse, or a trend, a threat, or whatever, a new version of ourselves that we're supposed to become immediately. Right? This future is constantly being advertised to us, warned about, monetized, packaged, and pushed through that little glowing window in our hands. So after a while, the nervous system forgets how to stand down. We start to live in a permanent state of almost bad news, almost change, almost breakthrough, almost disaster, almost meaning, almost home. Maybe that's the exhaustion that we don't know how to name, right? It's not just regular tiredness, not like a sleepy kind of tiredness, right? It's a deeper fatigue. It comes from living too long in anticipation. The body keeps asking, is it now? The world keeps answering, no, not yet, soon. That can do something strange to a person, you know? It stretches the soul, makes time feel wrong. Days pass, but the future never arrives. Weeks disappear, but nothing feels completed. You look back and can't tell where last month went. Somehow you also feel like you've been waiting for years. I had that feeling lately. It's not a confession of some grand suffering. It's quiet, like sitting in a room and realizing the furniture of your life is familiar, but it's like the atmosphere has changed, you know? Same books on the shelf, same lamp, same night outside the window, but silence has a different shape. I've been thinking about storms more lately, right? Not the storm itself, really, but like the moment right before. The pressure, the green light, the way the leaves turn over and show the other side of themselves. The birds go quiet, you know. The dogs are looking around all weird. The whole world seems to become a single listening body. And that moment has always fascinated me. Because nothing's happened yet, right? There's no lightning, no rain, no sirens. It's just a pressure. It's the atmosphere. The invisible is becoming undeniable. And that's what we're feeling now. Not the storm, but the pressure before it. And I don't mean literal catastrophe. I don't want to make this cheap and superficial. I'm not here to frighten you with some prediction. That's too easy, you know? And there's enough fear in the world. I mean the storm inside our perception, inside of our identity, inside meaning. The sense that something in the collective atmosphere has shifted, and the old explanations are just not holding the way they used to. People still say the normal things. They ask about work and plans and traffic, and send these little reactions to each other, you know. You can feel it. There's this quiet trembling. People are tired. People are lonely. People are reachable all the time, yet somehow harder to actually reach. People are changing internally faster than their lives can rearrange around them. And that creates pressure. A world full of people who have outgrown their own routines but don't know what comes next. That is a charged world. That's a world of weather. I came across a strange account once about a lighthouse keeper somewhere along a cold coast. I don't remember exactly where. Maybe Scotland, right? Or Nova Scotia or something. Maybe the story's been told too many times and kind of changed shape along the way. But the part I remember is this. He claimed that on certain foggy nights before storms, he could hear bells. He could hear bells from a town that had fallen into the sea decades earlier. Not real bells, right? Like a trick of the wind or something. Maybe the metalwork of ships or just his memory. But he said the sound always came before the worst weather. Soft bells far out in the fog, from a place that was not there anymore. It could be nothing, right? Just completely fabricated. But to me, it's this idea that the future sometimes announces itself in the voice of the past. Before the storm arrives, you hear old bells. Maybe that's how change works in a human life. Before something new comes, the old things start ringing. Old fears, old memories, old dreams, old versions of yourself. People from the past showing up in dreams and songs you haven't heard in years. Names appearing in odd places. A sudden grief for something you thought you'd already finished grieving. Maybe you felt that too. The strange return of old material, Not because you're going backward, but because something in you is preparing to cross a threshold. And before you cross, the archive opens. It's almost like the soul is saying, before we move, we need to take a look at what we're carrying. And that is not comfortable. That could even feel like a regression, You thought you were past that fear, and then there it is. You thought that person no longer mattered. Then they walk through your dreams like they still have a key. You thought you had become someone new. And then the old self returns for one more conversation. Maybe that's part of the message. Maybe that's the passage. Maybe the old self is not trying to trap you. Maybe it's trying to be witnessed before it lets go. There's something tender about that, if you can bear to look at it. Because we abandon so many versions of ourselves just to survive. The child who wants to be seen, the teenager who learned to hide, and the young adult who confused intensity with destiny, the version of you who stayed too long or left too soon, the version of you who believed in the wrong person or who stopped believing in anything for a while. They don't disappear just because we get older. They become transmissions, signals under the signal, right? Static behind your current life. And when change approaches, they get louder. That's why the present feels so crowded lately. It's not too much happening outside. It's too much trying to be integrated inside. You're standing in the middle of your life with all these unfinished selves gathering around you. And every one of them has a question. Did we survive for this? Are we safe now? Are we becoming real? Are we allowed to want something different? Are we finally going to listen? Now, I don't know what your questions are, but you do. Maybe not clearly. Maybe they come as moods instead of words. A heaviness in the afternoon, a sudden urge to disappear for a few days. A craving for a place you cannot name. A feeling of being homesick in your own house. The feeling that your life is almost right, but not quite aligned. And that one's difficult, because it can make you feel ungrateful. You look around and you think, I should be content. Maybe some things are good, right? Maybe a lot of things are good. Maybe you've worked hard for what you have, and still there's this quiet misalignment. Something in you leaning toward a door you can't see. And maybe you can't tell anyone, right? But you know the feeling. It's a private unrest. Not an upheaval, but it's not small enough to ignore. It's just there. It's persistent. Like a radio station fading in and out beneath the static. I think a lot of people mistake that for like personal failure. It's just like, why can't I just be normal? Why can't I relax? Why can't I just enjoy what I have? Why do I feel like I'm waiting for a life that hasn't introduced itself yet? What if the waiting is not a flaw? What if it's sensitivity? You're picking up on the approach of your own future before your conscious mind has language for it. That doesn't mean the future will be dramatic. Sometimes it's a decision so small that nobody else really notices. You stop answering a certain kind of message. Maybe you stop pretending to enjoy a conversation. Maybe you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You could start going to bed earlier or later. Maybe you start reading again, yeah. Start walking at night. You start noticing your own resentment and treating it like information instead of shame. You start admitting that the life which once protected you may now be containing you. The future can begin very quietly. A door opens inside before any door opens outside. And that inner opening can feel quite like dread. Because the part of you that knows change is coming doesn't always know the difference between liberation and danger. The body remembers risk. The nervous system remembers loss. So even good transformation can arrive wearing the mask of fear. And that's why the threshold feels so strange. You're being drawn forward and held back at the same time. One part of you whispers, "Come on." Another part says, "We have survived by staying here." Both are trying to protect you, right? That's kind of the human condition. We're not simple creatures. We are houses full of rooms. Some of those rooms are lit, some of them are locked. Some contain the furniture from lives that we don't live anymore. And sometimes, late at night, you can feel someone moving around in there. You know, the old dream that refuses to die, the future self walking quietly through the basement of your mind, touching the pipes, checking the foundation, you know. And I think that's the reason these old buildings feel so powerful. The old schools and hospitals and stuff, right? Churches with broken windows and factories where the weeds are growing through the concrete. They make the past more visible. They show us what happens when purpose leaves a structure, but the structure remains. That's why certain parts of our lives start to feel haunted before they end. The purpose has already left, but the routine is still there. The relationship is still there, the job, the identity, the old language. But the living force, right, is gone. So we walk through it like an abandoned mall with the lights on, and the escalators are still moving, and the music is still playing. There's a fountain with no water in it. And we wonder why everything feels eerie. Maybe because some part of us knows that form without life becomes a ghost. Yeah, sometimes we're just tired. Sometimes we need food and sleep and sunlight. But there is a kind of restlessness that doesn't go away after rest. It sharpens, it becomes more clear, it starts pointing at things. And that's the one worth listening to. It's not going to flatter you. It's not going to promise an easy escape. It's the one that simply says, this is not it. Or, this is no longer it. There's a difference there, right? This is not it can be contempt. But this is no longer it. Well, that can be grief. And grief is often a part of becoming. We don't just grieve people, we grieve timelines, identities, those versions of life that almost worked. We grieve the future we imagined before we knew ourselves better. We grieve the fantasy that someday everything would become simple. That's a hard one to lose, right? The fantasy of arrival. The belief that eventually we would reach a clean, shining place where everything made sense, and we would finally become the sort of person who never felt lost in a grocery store at night while buying toilet paper and wondering what any of this is really for. But maybe adulthood is not arrival. It's learning how to receive signals without demanding a map. Learning to walk through the fog with enough honesty to keep moving. I think you already understand this. Because if you're listening to this kind of thing at this kind of hour, you're probably not here for easy answers. You're here because something in the atmosphere of your life has become too strange to ignore. The usual noise didn't satisfy you tonight. You're here because some part of you wanted a voice to sit beside the feeling instead of, just explaining it away. So let us sit beside it for a moment, okay? This feeling that something is coming. What if it's not only about the world? What if it's about you? What if the approaching thing is not an event, but a self? A more honest one, less performative, more dangerous, yeah? In the sense that truth is dangerous to any structure that was built on pretending. And what if you're not waiting for the world to change before you begin? What if the waiting itself is the last room of the old life? Waiting can become an identity. You can spend years being almost ready, almost clear, almost healed, almost brave, almost free. And the strange thing is, almost can become comfortable. It asks nothing final from you. It lets you keep dreaming without choosing. It lets you keep imagining the future without letting the future demand anything in return. But eventually, if the signal is real, almost begins to hurt. The waiting room becomes too small. The chair becomes uncomfortable. The old magazines no longer distract you. But you start to realize the door's not locked. You're just afraid of what walking through it would require. Now, I'm not telling you to quit your job or leave your life or send the message or move away or confess or burn everything down or anything like that. Real transformation is rarely that clean. Most of the time it just begins with attention. One honest recognition. A small refusal or a quiet yes. Because the moment you stop lying to yourself, because you're not suddenly fearless, but right, the lies become more exhausting than the truth. That's where the signal gets stronger. In attention. That's the difference between noise and signal. Noise demands reaction, but the signal invites recognition. The signal makes you still, even when it frightens you. The reason so many people feel like something is coming is because the signal is beginning to gather them from the places they have been scattered, from the phone, from the past, from the fear, from these little endless emergencies that steal life 1 hour at a time. There's a version of you that exists beneath all of that. It's not perfect, it's not pure, it's real. The one who knows what the room feels like before anyone speaks. The one who can tell when a conversation has no soul in it. The one who feels the pressure change before the storm. We have a strange loyalty to our own becoming. Yeah, I like that phrase, though. I don't know if I fully understand it. Loyalty to becoming. It sounds almost too formal for this hour. But maybe that's what the soul is asking of us. Not perfection, not a polished life, just loyalty to the thing in us that keeps trying to become true. Yeah. Becoming true, the sacred. The sacred's what asks you to become more true, more real, not more impressive, not productive, not visible, it's more real. Becoming real is not always pretty. Sometimes it looks like silence or disappointment. Sometimes it looks like losing interest in things that used to sedate you. Sometimes it looks like standing outside at night, feeling the air, and admitting that you do not want to live the rest of your life as a stranger to yourself. Maybe that's why the feeling has been so heavy lately, because like under the strangeness, right? Underneath the fatigue or the sense that something's coming, there's this demand for reality, a demand from within to stop mistaking movement for direction, to stop mistaking contact for connection, to stop mistaking noise for signal. I don't think that arrives as a clean revelation. I think it arrives as a kind of discomfort or a restlessness, as dreams, as coincidences, as old bells in the fog, as birds going quiet before the storm, as the feeling that you're waiting for something and then the gradual realization that something has been waiting for you too. I feel like reality seems to respond when we begin paying attention, right? Like you think of someone and then their name appears. Or you ask a question silently and then the world will answer you in a symbol or a sentence or a memory. It could just be coincidence, yeah. Often. But sometimes coincidence has a temperature and sometimes it lands with weight. Sometimes the hair on your arms rises, right? Not because you believe something, but because something in you recognizes a pattern before the mind can approve it. I don't know what to do with that exactly. I'm careful with it. I don't want to turn every random event into a message. That way madness lies. But I also don't want to live in a world where nothing means anything unless it can be measured immediately. There has to be a middle path, right? A way to stay sane and still be permeable to wonder. A way to notice without being consumed. A way to trust the signal without worshiping the static. Maybe Dove and Serpent Radio exists in that middle place. A little room in the dark where we don't need to prove everything. We just need to listen honestly to the world, to the weirdness, to the ache under modern life, to the part of us that is tired of being explained away. And tonight, maybe the signal is simple. Maybe it's saying that the feeling of something coming is not necessarily a warning. Maybe it's an invitation. Yeah, a quiet invitation. To stop treating your own life as something that will begin later. Because later is the dream that keeps us asleep. And maybe the future doesn't arrive all at once. It enters through the smallest places first, through attention, through honesty, through the moment you admit what you already know, and you stop waiting for permission from a world that profits from your delay. That sounds sharper than I meant it to. Maybe it needs to be sharp, right? Some truths are merciful because they cut. And if you felt like something's coming, maybe you don't need to panic. You don't need to decode every omen. You don't need to tell everyone. You don't even need to know what it is yet. You just need to stay close enough to yourself that when it arrives, you can recognize it. And I think that's enough for tonight. Not everything has to be solved before morning. So if you're lying there in the dark, or driving under those empty lights, or sitting in some quiet room with your own thoughts moving around like weather, let this be said plainly. You are not strange for feeling the pressure. You're not foolish for sensing the threshold. You're not weak because the old life feels too thin now. You're not broken because sleep doesn't fix the kind of tiredness you're carrying. Something may be coming, but it's not here to destroy you. It is here to gather you. It is here to return the scattered parts. It's here to make the false things feel false enough that you can finally stop kneeling before them. The world feels different because you are different. Time feels strange because you are standing between versions of yourself. The waiting has become unbearable. The part of you that came here to live is tired of rehearsing. I don't know much, but I know this. There are nights when the air changes. There are rooms that feel like thresholds. There are dreams that follow you into morning. There are songs that find you precisely. There are bells in the fog, whether anyone else hears them or not. Until next time, stay strange in the silence, and keep the dial somewhere between wonder and understanding.